Hey, it is FU Friday. And it's also a good reminder that we're a live show, as you can tell by the noise in the background from Ciara's Twitter Spaces.
I turned down my ringer, not my volume.
Oh, handy. Yeah, so we're a live show, Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Every Friday, we do something called FU Friday. And essentially, we talk about some pretty negative news and different things, and just people that we kind of want to say FU to, generally speaking. So today is no different. We're going to cover all of that stuff today. What are we specifically talking about, Ciara?
Today's a little bit different because usually we say like FU Gary Gensler, but this is actually a really serious topic, as you can tell. We're going to talk about war.
I'm going to go through Gary Gensler withdrawals if I can't say FU to Gensler.
Well, get it out of your system now, because we're actually going to talk about war. And obviously, the majority of us have an FU attitude towards war already. So what we're going to talk about today is the role that crypto plays in war. Obviously, the Russia-Ukraine war, a lot of people are calling that the first crypto war. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, as we'll get into later, because we also saw quite a lot of crypto exchanging hands in terms of Taliban and Afghanistan, that sort of thing. But we'll talk about it a little bit generally. What does cryptocurrency mean for war? Why does it matter? And then we'll get into some of the news that you might have seen over the last few months about the Russia-Ukraine war.
Awesome. And then we're talking
super serious Friday.
Yeah, we're talking about Afghan and some terrorism stuff and a whole bunch of crap. It's really, it's going to be a good day. All right. Well, like, share, subscribe, help us get the word out. I am not wearing merch. Actually, I am wearing merch today, but shout out to Magic Internet Money, TBTC.
Oh yeah, solid.
It's kind of hard to see, but it's a little chilly in here, so I'm wearing a hoodie today. Anyways,
it's always hard to see when it's a little bit chilly. All right.
True. It's the temperature really makes your vision messed up. All right.
Okay.
All right. Let's go. All right, we are back. Man, I'm getting good at that. The sound.
You are getting good at that. I was impressed.
Faces and everything. Oh, holy moly. Okay, Ukraine war. Set it up.
Crypto and the Russia-Ukraine war. So, okay, hold on. Before we start, I need to just have this disclosure that we have whenever we talk about illicit crypto crimes, etc., which is that people are going to have the crimes with or without crypto.
Yes. And
we've talked about
fiat is a much easier vehicle for illicit.
We've talked before about like the war on drugs and how crypto was fueling the dark web so that people could buy more fentanyl. We've talked about human trafficking and how crypto was being used on the dark web for human trafficking. And it's like, hey, did you know that both of those types of crime existed before crypto? And so I feel that it's important to note that that's the case in war as well. What is interesting is that crypto brings a new way for people to fund wars. So for individuals or companies to actually send money to a place that might be sanctioned, it allows for a different type of transaction to happen in terms of weapons and arsenals and all of that kind of thing. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I just need you to understand that war occurred before crypto.
Yeah, if you weren't clear on that. War.
Great opening, Ciara.
Okay, good disclaimer.
All right, we nailed it. So, okay, so what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine war? Well, a lot of people are saying that the Russia-Ukraine war is the quote-unquote first crypto war because there's so much money and funding being sent that way. So individuals have been asked, you can donate to Red Cross with crypto in some areas. Crypto is a way larger role in the Russia-Ukraine war than ever before. It's been over a year now of that war, and Chainalysis has taken a look at what that means. So I have a few other people, but Chainalysis has taken a look at what that actually means and how this has become a crypto war. Basically, there's malicious activity, everything from propaganda and ransomware and purchasing weapons to positive activity like aid donations and helping people move and that kind of thing. But pro-Russia groups received 5.4 million in crypto donations in 1 year, primarily sent through mainstream exchanges. This is a big deal because obviously we have a bunch of sanctions with Russia, and
Ukraine got a pile of cash too
sure
via
did.
crypto donations, and they're not necessarily going to the government. Like often they're going to, these militant groups or different factions of the military and different things. So, but yeah, like, I mean, we've talked a lot actually about sanctions and weaponizing SWIFT. And so this to me is just the natural fallout from that. We do that and they're going to find other ways they're going to have to build other infrastructure to get resources in and out of their country. They're not just going to sit there by themselves and not have any global trade. So I suppose this kind of makes sense. It's incredible how much money has been sent.
So much money.
Yeah, and like you kind of mentioned this a couple of minutes ago, but the ransomware and a lot of these attacks, like that's been a pretty big revenue driver actually for Russian enterprise. Like obviously I don't think it's the Russian government directly, but I'll tell you, I'm sure they're probably involved somehow. Same thing, North Korea. North Korea is funding a lot of their activities.
Oh, we'll get there.
Crypto hacks. Yeah.
Not yet.
We will talk about them, but I mean, this is, again, we're talking about this in terms of some of the illicit activities and some of the crap that happens. But it's worth noting that, I mean, again, as you said at the beginning, it's not a crypto specific issue. Like this issue existed anyways. Previously, it was just cash. Now, from anywhere in the world, without meeting someone in person, you can send money. So it's a lot easier. The barriers to entry are
in some instances, actually, on that note, we might actually see that the money makes it more directly, whether it's a cause that we believe in or not, because there's not so many hands to pass through and greedy fingers. So kind of an interesting thing too, if you look at the numbers and you think that they're really inflated, that might be one reason. There's not so many bribes and what have you. And as JD said, Ukraine has received a ton of crypto as well. So while we are saying, oh, wow, Russia, you got $5 million. Well, it looks like pro-Ukraine groups gathered over $200 million in crypto donations.
It's insane. Direct to the government, 70 million, but the total for all of Ukrainian support is over $200 million since the beginning of the war. That's a lot of cash internationally. I mean, it doesn't take long, really, if you think about it, the amount of people globally that could donate, a small amount of money, it adds up pretty quick, but that's a big number. I mean, it's nothing compared to what the US is sending them in aid, but
right. Yeah.
It's
well, Chainalysis also found that ransomware in Russia within the last year has exploited over $450 million during the war. So I didn't find information about who that was funding, if that was pro-Russia groups or if that was also individuals, but Chainalysis decided in this analysis, in this coverage of the war, that they would not classify it as pro-Kremlin crypto, just general ransomware from Russia.
Yeah, and I think that's because it's very difficult to know that with any amount of certainty. Oh, great. My dog is going bananas. Hopefully you can't hear him, but if you can, we're a live show. Anyways, so yeah, I think, I don't know. It's there's no way that there's that amount of value transferring into Russia without the government having something to do with it. But we'll see.
Now, here's something else that's kind of interesting is you might think, well, they got crypto, but what can they do with it? Right?
Build weapons.
But like, you're like, oh, I have crypto and I have to exchange it into fiat to buy my groceries and pay my rent. Like, what is the Ukraine and Russia what are they possibly doing with this influx of cash? And so Ukrainian Deputy Digital Minister Alex Bornyakov actually said that around 60% of war suppliers were able to accept crypto.
Yeah, and I mean,
that's obscene.
Yeah, it's a really good way though, defense assets. So if you're a munitions dealer selling to the Ukraine or to Russia, you don't want to be found out, obviously, because that would be a huge problem because you're contributing to the war. So the same as cash, obviously. The idea behind cash is that they'll give you weapons for cash, but there's no paper trail, pun intended, of where that cash came from and went, and that's obviously interesting to them. You can sort of do something similar with crypto if that crypto never connects to fiat. So they can buy and sell using crypto in non-KYC wallets, and that is possible. It's difficult to maintain proper anonymity, but it is possible So I think, that's why they're approaching it this way.
Well, since we are already talking about munitions a little bit, let's talk about North Korea.
Yep. Dennis Rodman? What? Just kidding.
So apparently North Korea is also engaging in ransomware attacks, cybercrime, that kind of thing. There's actually a huge article about it that we'll share, including a video. So if you want to learn more specifically about that. But in 2022, North Korea reportedly stole $1.7 billion from the crypto ecosystem, which is an obscene amount of money. And then it's like, okay, well, what are they doing? So a lot of people believe that they are buying munitions, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, this has been like a source of, I think, a lot of FUD for the last little bit. Like anytime there's some sort of attack, everybody just says, oh, it's North Korea. Oh, it's Russia. But it actually is. In many cases, there's a pretty good amount of proof that a lot of funds have found their way into North Korea. I'll say saving grace is that very, very soon, most blockchain finance will be permissioned one way or another. You'll have to KYC at some point to use most protocols, because major jurisdictions you're going to need to know that you're not, if you don't have licenses in them, you need to know you're not servicing any of those clients. Anyways, all of this to say, North Korea is on the OFAC sanction list. So any assets that make their way into North Korea, any reputable platform will not accept them, obviously. Will not accept those wallets and those IPs and those locations. So, I mean, this one is a little bit more siloed, I think. Russia isn't as siloed, but this one is. But yeah, it's a major source of funding. It's essentially free cash. And if you think about it, we talk about this quite a bit, but imagine, like, there was a $60 million hack or something yesterday. Imagine if that was like Bonnie and Clyde and they had robbed 60 million from a bank. Like, how many police officers and like the news media and everybody like would be focused on that? And there's no way you would ever get 60 million in cash from pretty much any bank. So, I mean, this is like, it's crazy. The payoff is huge. And often the pursuit of these thieves is not coordinated yet. It's possible, but it's not like immediate response and everybody knows what to do and how to do it. So for that reason, it makes sense for these rogue governments, I guess, to essentially state sponsor these hacking kind of groups. And if you think about it, you put 10 or 15 really highly skilled black hat hackers in a room, and their goal is to find vulnerabilities in protocols. Now, we as protocol operators obviously spend a lot of time patching and making sure that we're aware of any vulnerabilities and fixing them. But often it becomes a bit of an arms race, pun intended, because we always talk about crypto arms race, but it really does. It becomes, if they put a team of 15 or 20 people together, that's more than 99.9% of all crypto protocols have as team sizes. And the levels of expertise are probably a little bit different, and they have one singular focus: exploit. And so it's no wonder this stuff happens, but I think it's going to be a lot harder as time goes on here pretty quickly.
Absolutely. So, okay, before we move on from the Russia-Ukraine war specifically, I also just want to talk a little bit about creative fundraising and crypto adoption. So when the Ukraine war started, you could do pretty well anything. Like, people were just launching art, and like Scouts was raising money for Scouts Ukraine, and you could buy, a Scout sash that had the Ukraine colors on it. We know this because we know Scouters. This isn't just me being a weirdo.
You're actually just in Scouts.
Just in Scouts. But there were a lot of different things that you could do like that. And people thought, well, why are we limiting this? Why do I have to mail something around the world as part of this fundraiser? And so we actually saw NFTs of Ukrainian flags being sold. And that raised $6.75 million. Is that right? $6.75 million. And I just thought that was a really interesting concept, is like, this opens a new world for fundraising. And well, as terrible as war is, it does pressure people to try something that they haven't tried before. And so I'm surprised that we haven't seen more nonprofit fundraising and nonprofit acceptance of crypto, considering what we've seen in terms of aid here. Like, we talked last week about one Red Cross area taking crypto. Do you remember where?
No.
But it was like a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal that they take crypto. I mean, part of the reluctance for adoption, I think, for charities and such, is regulatory uncertainty. So there's, as a registered charity, you can't do and hold the same types of assets as just a corporation or an individual. And so I think that's been part of it. So I suspect that this is just the tip of the iceberg, what we're going to see. I think it makes, in terms of global fundraising, it's a bit of a double-edged sword though, right? Because normally you can find yourself a bit of a niche and you can really work your target audience and so on. Once everything is global, then your target audience is global, but so is everybody else's. So it becomes a lot more competitive for the same eyeballs. So it's good if you have brand reputation and if you're a charity that people want to support and you're doing something that people believe in. But there's going to be a lot of competition, in my opinion. But we'll see. I think we'll see a lot more of it once there's some regulatory clarity and they can figure out how to comfortably and legally hold these assets on their balance sheet.
Now, on that same kind of space, as unfortunate as it is, war does drive innovation. I mean, that's how we got cell phones and et cetera. And so in this case, we're seeing war driving adoption, right? We're seeing individuals onboarding to crypto so that they can travel. We're seeing individuals onboarding to crypto so that they're not using their fiat and being tracked. We're seeing Russians onboarding to crypto so that they're not being tracked and held accountable, and so that they can overcome sanctions and still get products that they want and still interact with their families abroad, while we're seeing Ukrainians interact with crypto so that they don't feel quite so limited and out of control, and so that they can access their funds if they have to suddenly move or something to that end. So as terrible as it is, war does have a lot of technological innovations that we wouldn't see otherwise. And I wonder how adoption is being impacted by war. I didn't actually find any active reports on it, but interesting to think about. It's
unfortunate, actually, in a lot of ways that that is a motivation for a lot of the military industrial complex to perpetuate these wars, these forever wars, or these wars all over the place. And why the U.S. is poking the bear in Russia is there's a lot of money made by significant military manufacturers in America and globally. And I think that's unfortunate. I feel like a lot of these wars, unfortunately, go forward because of the technical innovation and the business opportunity for a lot of these companies at the cost of the citizens of those nations' finances. The nation itself almost always comes out of war in a very bad spot and has a lot of rebuilding to do. And of course, there's so many lives lost. Like it's absolutely absurd that in the name of profit, that these are perpetuated. It's kind of crazy to me, drives me crazy, but I suppose it's one of the byproducts of war that if it's going to exist, then I guess there's some upside to it, if we could even call it that, upside.
I don't know if I call it an upside. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to talk about today is the concept of this being the first crypto war and why that may or may not be true. A lot of people believe that the Russia-Ukraine war is the first crypto war because there has been so much aid on both sides, as we saw in the millions of dollars on both sides. But even throughout 2022, we saw that Afghanistan had a huge uptick in crypto adoption when the Taliban took over. So that debatable that it's not the first crypto war, but that crypto has been funding other wars for quite some time. This was just last year in 2022. But it's something interesting to think about. So basically, I think it was May 2022, the Taliban cracked down on the capital of Afghanistan, and a lot of people were fleeing, and have been a lot of refugees from that. But people didn't know what to do with their money because the Taliban basically froze all of their central bank accounts. So as the Taliban actually came down onto the capital, a lot of people were suddenly onboarding and aping into crypto because they felt like that was the only way they were going to be able to access their funds as they crossed borders and that kind of thing.
And if they had to flee Afghanistan because of persecution, they could take some assets with them. Exactly. Yeah, it's unfortunate because obviously there's a significant value add for the citizens of countries like Afghanistan and so on. But it's unfortunate that we need to see this type of oppression before people are motivated enough to make some change. It's of course I like to see the adoption, but I hate to see why. These governments are so oppressive that the citizens have no choice but to find alternates. So,
now, there were some dApps that wanted to support that. One is called Hisab Pay. Hisab Pay actually created a more instantaneous type of transfer for people so that they didn't necessarily have to KYC, and it was kind of bypassing banks and the Taliban. I imagine that they caught a lot of shit for that, but they did it.
I think that was a Web2 fintech though. I don't think that I think that connected. You could make transfers with them I don't think it's a crypto thing,
right. But it's just interesting to think that a lot of people, wanted to support and help, but at the same time, there was a lot of misinformation and other people were stealing the money of people who are trying to flee terrorism. So not ideal on both sides. And then of course there are limitations as you're traveling. I was kind of thinking about this too. I've met refugees who, crossed a sea on a boat, and obviously they're far more resilient than I am. But when you had cash that was yours and it was in your pocket, and you might lose it in the water, but it still worked when you got to the other side. If there's limited internet, if there's unreliable electricity, anything like that, what are you doing with your crypto as you're traveling around? So I can see this being very challenging and a really big decision for people to move into that crypto space. But many people did. We saw a lot more digital transactions. However, the Taliban, of course, noticed that and cracked down on it only a few months later by October 2022. And so the crypto value that was moving plummeted from 150 million to under $80,000 in just 2 months.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the other kind of byproduct of cryptocurrency for refugees and people fleeing the country is that as long as they have a meaningful way to protect their private keys, there's a lot of theft and there's a lot of crazy shit that happens with human trafficking and refugees and how they get from A to B. Often there's a lot of rape and theft and all of this crap. I mean, this is another layer of protection, I suppose, against that, where a lot of people will carry their belongings with them, lose them on the way. In this particular case, if you got a few members of your family to memorize parts of the private key, you just have to make sure that, if everybody doesn't make it, that there's backups. But anyways, there's some things that you can do. Yeah, it's really sad to even think about, but I think it's, I understand why people are trying to do it.
Now, before we move on and talk about this in a bit of a higher level, there's also been a number of Central Asian terrorist groups who are, quote unquote, embracing online financing. And so this is specifically, there's been a study that was done in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan about the patterns of terrorism financing in the Central Asia region. And basically what they do is they have propaganda or donor contact, then they have messaging communication, and then they ask for digital transaction. We actually saw a lot of this with people being onboarded in America to the Taliban. I don't know if you remember that during the,
they ran a bunch of Facebook ads, I think.
That's right. So this isn't new. It's not a new concept that terrorists might engage in this activity. It's not a new concept that they're preying on individuals, but they do have now a new way that is irrefutable to get your money. And so just something that I thought should be noted. They didn't have a huge rate of success as far as the investigation went, but typically there's an attrition rate of people who actually reported the crime. So.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time defending crypto from a illicit activity perspective because it of course exists, but these are really the stains on the space. Now, again, I still don't think that it's any greater than fiat, but it is more efficient than fiat terrorist financing, and it's a lot faster, and you can garner support from much smaller participants, and so. Net, I don't know if they raise more money this way, but it sure is easier in some ways. And for that reason, this is really one of the negative aspects of digital assets. I think that there's a lot of pluses. There's a lot more security. There's a lot in many ways. There's a lot more sovereignty and control and transparency and so on. But the flip side is that often some of this crap happens too. And I mean, terrorist financing, whether it's in Asia, like I think this article talks specifically about Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, which Oddly, I think I referenced Tajikistan the other day on the pod. I can't remember why. Yeah, a country I've never been to and you never hear about, but I think I brought it up
until now.
I can't remember.
Twice this week.
Twice this week. But anyways, yeah, this is really unfortunate. Like we spent all day today talking about terrorism and a lot of and war and a lot of the negative use cases for crypto. So I'll quickly first remind you that we're a live show Monday to Friday. You can tell
hold on.
Based on our banter. Oh, you got something else?
Just really quick is that there's actually been a number of government studies done on anti-money laundering and how they relate to crypto. And so we don't have time to like dive into that today, but they've done a number of really specific studies about Bitcoin. We'll be posting about that on LinkedIn probably later today or possibly tomorrow. And then we'll also do a little breakdown of some actual American government anti-money laundering investigations in terms of crypto. And I was going to do a high level of those and post them on LinkedIn too. So if you're interested in this topic and you want to know a little bit more, just know that more is coming out over the weekend as late as Monday. And
find us on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, I guess that too. It's just a good spot to post that stuff. People seem to care about it there.
Yeah, we'll definitely, I think we'll post some links to our LinkedIn and so on underneath the video so that you can get there, navigate there easily and stuff. Okay. Now
you can tell them everything.
Monday to Friday. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. We're on every major platform. Help us spread the word, get it out there, and share the love with others. Today, I'm saying F you to terrorists and warmongers and politicians that support war because of the financial gains. So F you to all of you guys today and every day. And with that, I say to you, Ceara, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.